One thing I will say comfortably about my feelings on part 3 is I stand by the fact this should have been weekly episodes. I'm glad it wasn't dropped at once, now that we have it all. I still think half and half was not the way to go, especially the second half of the season. I think we would have really benefited from weekly episodes so that we had time to focus on 1 hour-long thing and then think on that and discuss it instead of having everything thrown at you at once. Because the second half, great, very dense. There's a lot going on, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It's a thing that we need to, if we're going to engage in discussion, we need to account for. Like, I feel like the internet is so reactionary, and from people commenting, like, everything that they're seeing so far is so negative, and like, that's because all of the people that are gonna have positive things to say about it have to think a little more. The people who hate it are just gonna hate it, and that's whatever. All peace and love, but like, release schedules do matter. The way that things are released is actually known to impact not just audience reception, but like audience interpretation of shows. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely wish there was straight up more content. I want more episodes, I want longer episodes because I enjoy the show and I want to see it. But at this exact same time that people are saying this, people are also upset that, oh my gosh, season 4 isn't even going to come out until 2026. It's going to take that long. Yes, it will, because Bridgerton is a huge production. And if you already hate waiting 2 years, if you gave them more episode, it might take 3. Are you okay with that? It's fine if you are, but I'm just genuinely asking. The complexity of the story that needs to be told this season is literally so much content packed in to each and every episode that giving people a week between having time to noodle on this one episode as they get excited for the next one literally makes them think deeper about it in order to catch all of those things. I simply don't think it's unreasonable to use release schedule as a tool to make your audience appreciate what they have already more. And this is something that I experienced too. Like, towards the end of episode 7 or the beginning of 8, I was like, I feel like this is moving way too fast. It wasn't. I was just watching it too fast. As a visual medium, we consume more film and TV than any other art. And the binge model perpetuates and encourages the continued devaluation of production staff. Viewers are not thinking about that from a technical side, and in their minds, they're just thinking more. Give me more. Give me more. Encouraging audiences to engage more deeply with the things that they're already being given is the respectful thing to do to appreciate the many people who went into creating the story to begin with. I need you guys to be so for real right now. Bridgerton season 3 was not written by AI. It was not written by AI. But you know what was? That article that you guys are sourcing. And in fact, the entire blog that the article is from. Because, oh my goodness, it's a demonstration of the product from an AI company. The article that you are citing as a source for the fact that Bridgerton season 3 was written by AI is from an AI company's demo blog. What was that we like to make fun of boomers for being susceptible to misinformation on the internet? Do you guys remember something about that? Are there things about season 3 that I would have done differently? Yes, absolutely. But y'all are grasping for straws at reasons to hate it, beyond just admitting that you didn't like it. Yes, and legality absolutely determines behavior. This is a skill that you should have learned in school, but if you haven't, I actually think this is a great opportunity to walk through genuinely how you can determine if a source is credible. If you go to basically any university website, you're going to find library guides at some point, which basically is just a bunch of information on how to do different things, like how to cite sources, as well as how to determine if they're valid. A lot of them have the same frameworks that they present. This one happens to be from the University of Washington, but the SMART check is what we're going to look at and what we are going to use to analyze the source. So our first question here is, who or what is the source? So this is the article that is claiming that Bridgerton Season 3 was written using AI. As we can see, it is by 2Immersive4U, and it's posted in their immersive content section on their website, which is under Stories. Now, who is Immersive4U? Well, if we go to the homepage of their website, it says that they're reimagining animated and digital video production, transforming concepts into immersive digital visions. Emmy-nominated pioneers in viewership experience, and 3 awards for blah, 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 blah. If you keep scrolling down, you can see this is a company that is offering creative AI. You get down to the bottom here, and it says, dive into captivating stories about the role of creative AI in shaping the future. Witness our achievements with prestigious projects and esteemed clients, 2Immersive4U and AI's groundbreaking impact on Hollywood. And then I do just want to point this out because I think it's really funny. It says the #1 AR/VR company in Ohio. And then also, if you go to their About section, it talks about some of their different achievements, but these are the things that they are actually heralding as capabilities of this AI. The very first thing on this list being story writing and creation. So let's look at what might their motive be to say what they do. Well, again, because we have just established that this is a company that provides AI for creative storytelling uses. Of course, their stories page, which also has other articles like how AI is maximizing attendance and how museums can benefit from AI videos for advertising. It might be reasonable to think that this company wants to point out the ways in which AI can be helpful in creative industries, specifically Hollywood, remember? So our next question, authority. Who wrote the story? Going back to the story itself, we don't even get a real author. We actually just get the company's name because, again, the company is an AI product. So we can safely assume that this article is written by the company's AI. So, okay, let's actually go through the story and review it. Is there anything that jumps out as potentially untrue? That seems kind of unlikely. So again, just going back to the title here, something you can notice about this is the fact that the photo that they're including has nothing to do with the production of the show. And you might say, well, that feels obvious because the images from the show would be copyrighted. Yes, that is the case. But again, this person is claiming that, well, they shouldn't be able to just like throw Bridgerton's name around unless they know something about them. Well, here's the thing. If they knew what they were talking about, then they would have licensing for actual images of behind the scenes, you know, like reputable magazine articles do. Okay, so it gets cut off at the top, but this is the beginning of it. It says storytelling, production, and audience engagement have all been enhanced by AI. Season 3 of Netflix's hit series Bridgerton shows how AI pushes the boundaries of period drama. From script writing to visual effects and audience analytics, AI played a crucial role this season. AI uses script writing and plot development for Season 3 of Bridgerton. Advanced algorithms analyzed previous scripts, audience reactions, and narrative trends. This data-driven approach helped writers create storylines that resonated with viewers, balancing new ideas with familiar elements. Okay, so far, this doesn't seem to be that crazy. Like, yeah, data-driven storytelling is kind of, unfortunately, the norm nowadays. They do care about, like, trends. So, okay, maybe. So it pretty quickly starts to fall apart in this section, though, when it starts talking about costume design and historical accuracy. Costume design is critical in any period drama, and Bridgerton is no exception. For Season 3, AI enhanced the costume design process. It also ensured historical accuracy and visual appeal. Analyzed fashion trends, fabrics, and colors of the period. This provided costume designers new insights. I think we've discussed this before, but nothing about Bridgerton is historically accurate. Definitely not in a costuming sense. Nothing about the fabrics or anything of the like is even remotely close to what would have been available at the time. There's also a whole YouTube video that's like 10-12 minutes from Shondaland with behind the scenes of the costuming department, where they walk through their entire process of how they make the costumes, and at no point in there are they saying that they reference AI to help them in that process. So it goes through other stuff, but let's skip down here to the conclusion. It says AI transformed season 3 of Bridgerton. Script writing, costume design, visual effects, and audience engagement were all enhanced by AI. It plays a multifaceted role in every aspect of production. As AI evolves, its application in television production will expand. New possibilities for creativity and innovation will arise. AI enhanced the quality of Bridgerton, setting a new standard for how technology can create compelling and immersive storytelling. The success of Season 3 shows how AI and human creativity can come together to create magic on screen. Remember, the future is not something we enter, the future is something we create. And with AI, we are creating a future that is more efficient, sustainable, and innovative. Follow us for more inspiration. Yeah, that last little bit there kind of seemed a little sales pitchy, if you ask me. Alright, and then let's do the 2 source test. So how does it compare to another source? So again, the original article cites exactly 0 sources. So let's go ahead and see if we can find anything else about it. So let's do a quick Google search here. AI Bridgerton Season 3. The first thing that comes up is from 9 hours ago. It's a person being like, is this true? We see another one also from today. If you scroll down a little more, 9 hours ago, somebody on Tumblr is talking about it. Have you guys heard about the use of AI in the script? If you keep scrolling a while, then we finally get to our original article that we're looking at. But then if you keep scrolling, all of this stuff is older, and they're just talking about AI renderings of characters. So, of Lord Featherington, Colin looks like AI Bridgerton. There was also that TikTok trend going on where people were using an AI filter to see what they would look like in Bridgerton. Those are the only other things coming up. So yes, the fact that you guys are using a random AI-generated blog post on an AI company's website as a source does in fact disprove its legitimacy. And I'm not a lawyer, I don't know, maybe it's illegal. I'm gonna guess it probably isn't, because they aren't necessarily, like, the article itself isn't being monetized. But even if it were, Bridgerton would have to go after them in order to enforce that. Like, it's not just going to be enforced on a third-party website. People can say whatever they want on the internet. It's up to you to determine if what they're saying has any type of validity to it. And in this case, there's exactly none. There's none.
One of the things that makes the Holocaust unique amongst genocide, and I use unique for the lack of a better word, is the presence of reparations. In fact, Germany is still paying reparations. In 2023, it was decided that Germany would pay $1.4 billion over the course of the year to Holocaust survivors. Between 1945 and 2018, the German government paid $86 billion to Holocaust victims and their heirs. In fact, what was West Germany at the time paid Israel directly. This was in order to help them resettle Jewish refugees. The agreement was signed in September 1952, and over the course of 14 years, West Germany paid Israel around $714 million. Germany committed a genocide in Namibia between 1904 and 1908, which was essentially their practice run for what would later happen in the Holocaust. Germany agreed with the Namibian government that it would pay them $1.1 billion over 30 years, which, by the way, the German descendants of these colonizers still have a monopoly on the economy in Namibia. They still have a hold of the land. The communities in Namibia are in uproar because they want their land back, and they think that the reparations should be directly paid to them, which it should be. Let's not forget that Germany compensated both Israel and the heirs and the victims directly, but refuses to hand that wealth back over to the Namibian people. And it is in order to keep them in a cycle of poverty. If they gave those heirs what they deserved, they would then be able to start their own businesses. They would then be able to become economically independent. And that is a direct threat to white supremacy. And in Germany, it's very common to be taught about the Holocaust, but it's way rarer to be taught about what happened in Namibia and Germany's other colonies. However, despite the genocides that Europeans have committed globally, Very rarely do any of those people receive compensation or reparations. And in fact, when they say that they deserve reparations, we have Europeans saying, but it wasn't my fault. It was my ancestors, not me. But they wouldn't say it to Holocaust survivors or victims. There is a belief that the pain inflicted on black and brown bodies is a given and a must. And I strongly do believe that Holocaust survivors and their heirs deserve compensation.
Majority of you don't even know enough about slavery to be talking about slavery, let alone trying to compare slavery to other historical atrocities like the Holocaust. As an archival historian, somebody who is trained particularly on the subject of slavery, that is my area of expertise, the general public still does not have an accurate conception of what slavery is, what slavery was. And that is not a coincidence. That is a remnant of the atrocity that was slavery. That is intentional. Slavery lasted for centuries. Slavery shaped nations, shaped entire systemic structures. The economic effects of slavery are still felt today. And the general public, does not understand or even have an accurate baseline conception of what slavery was. That is unique. That is unique to slavery. Slavery, like, I'm not saying, okay, it's worse, it's better, that's not how you should be conceptualizing slavery. That's not even how you should be thinking about slavery. You should be thinking about slavery from the perspective of it is not comparable to anything else. It is a completely unique historical atrocity. Slavery lasted for centuries, and all of the historical accounts and narratives that we have of slavery are still biased. Majority of the histories, if not all, that we have on slavery come from the perspectives of enslavers. Enslaved people had such little agency that they had no control over how the historical narratives of their own torment were being written. We know so little about the interior lives of enslaved people, despite the fact that slavery lasted for centuries and there were just unfathomable horrors that occurred during slavery for centuries, that there's an entire discipline of academic history dedicated to beginning to fabricate, beginning to conceptualize what their lives were like. Slavery is not comparable to anything else. Most of you don't even have a baseline understanding of what slavery was. Because if you did, you would know why it's just not comparable to anything else. If you want to learn more about slavery, okay, cool, we can have that conversation. You guys can start reading the journals of like plantation owners like Thomas Thistlewood. They're absolutely heinous, but they'll give you a little bit more of an understanding into how bad it was. But as far as trying to compare slavery to other things, no, it's not comparable. Like, stop doing that. It's not productive, it's not comparable, and honestly, it doesn't really do anything but rage bait people into having conversations they're just not equipped to have. So that's all I'm gonna say on that. If we want to learn more about slavery, let me know. We can have those conversations. I'm always here to, educate and do that. But no, stop this conversation.
We'll treat the Holocaust as if it's like the worst thing that ever happened in human history. And
You have no idea how much I love having this conversation. Let's have this conversation, because a lot of people don't understand that certain things are considered genocide that we live through every single fucking day. The reason why most people think that the Holocaust is the worst tragedy to ever happen to humanity in the modern era is because Israel paid for that to be the reality. Because the numbers just factually aren't there, you know what I mean? Not to be a bitch, but the reality is, with humans and power, genocide stuff happens all the time. There's a reason why our frame of reference in the Western world uses the Holocaust as the worst tragedy to happen to humankind in the modern era, when, as if you go back, go click the I tagged the person down below and watch that full video. The scale of slavery is absolutely insane when you try to put that in perspective. So let me try. Also, hi, my name is Madison, the creator behind the Madiswan channel. I have a podcast called Bloodstained where I talk about history through the lens of true crime. Season 1 is all about slavery. I know it's sad, but it's important information. Hit the link in the bio to listen or watch or subscribe to my YouTube channel and check it out. Boom. I will never forget that, and I say this every chance I get, I will never forget when I realized that slavery was happening on both coasts of Africa at the same fucking time. The Arab slave trade was happening in East Africa, and the transatlantic slave trade was happening in West Africa on the West Coast, and they were funneling millions of people at the same fucking time outside of the continent of Africa to work and do forced labor in other regions, okay? This is important to understand because the way we are taught history as a tool of indoctrination, but not a tool of truth. So we learn about things in a very linear sense and not a circular, holistic sense that's thematic. When you learn about things in a linear way, it individualizes a situation. So when we learn about slavery, we're just thinking about the transatlantic slave trade. But as we are living through right now, we know that there's many history-making things that happen in a single moment, at a single time, at the same damn time. So I will never forget when I learned that the Arab slave trade both predated, it started in the 7th century, predated the transatlantic slave trade, and postdated the transatlantic slave trade. It ended in the 60s. Yeah. Some say it's still going on because of how the labor, the not the forced labor, but the domestic labor routes that Africans go to outside of the country to make money to send back home are very similar to the slave routes back in the day in terms of the East African slave trade. But that's a conversation for another day. If you want more tea on that, again, go to my YouTube video, go to my podcast episode about this. It's podcast episode 0. But we have to understand that we have both of these slave trades were responsible for upwards of 20 million people being forced into labor, not to mention all the people that died on their journey, which is not really calculated because, of course, we weren't thought of as human beings to be worth calculating except for someone's bottom line. So at the end of the day, we still are estimating the true scope of loss when it comes to the slave trade. I say all of this to say, right? Imagine if we went to school and you learned about the theme of genocide and not just the Holocaust. And imagine how important that would be for you to understand the patterns of genocide, how it happens. Is it economic distress that leads to genocide? And how do they prepare people to target a group of people to completely annihilate? What is the marketing for genocide? What are the patterns leading up to genocide? What are the conditions that make genocide possible? So many things would fit under that theme. You would see residential schools under that theme. You would see reservations under that theme. You would see redlining under that theme. You would see police brutality under that theme. You would see food deserts under that theme. You would see everything under that theme. But the reality is, if they did things thematically, it would build solidarity amongst people who are marginalized by Western society. So instead, they teach things linearly instead of thematically in order to individualize these problems so they can have the space to skew the in-between. But the reality is, there is a reason why you are taught in the Western world that the Holocaust is the worst thing that ever happened in modern time. It was terrible, yes, but it was not the only genocide to happen in the modern times. It wasn't even the one with the biggest body count, if we're keeping it a bean. So yeah, link in the bio for the pod. I am at episode 4 now. Episode 5 is coming out next week. I will be talking about slave rebellion, so get into that. Mwah. Love you. The Oppression Olympics talking point is really dumb, and I want us to have a real conversation about this because it's super annoying when it constantly comes up. So let's talk about it. This person commented on this video that I just posted. It is really messed up what happened. I don't think we should be comparing whose trauma is the worst. Nobody was comparing whose trauma was the worst. And I think this is where that media literacy shit comes into play. I, in that video, was very clearly talking about how we are taught about different genocides and how we are taught and indoctrinated to believe that one specific genocide is above all other genocides. And that is a purposeful indoctrination. That is not by accident. That's all I was talking about. I was saying that I would love for all of us to learn about every genocide equally with equal importance because every person's life is important and every lost life is worth talking about. But people were all up in my comments talking about, oh, we shouldn't compare tragedies. Oppression Olympics are we playing the Oppression Olympics? So let me school you on something really fast. words like worst or best or craziest or most terrible, those are words that are subjective and relative based on who you are and your experience, which is why that oppression Olympics talking point came into be in the first place. Pain is relative to the person who's receiving that pain's experience. It's all relative. So, yeah, me saying something is worse than the other thing is based on how I view that one thing, of course. What I am trying to reference and talk about, which is very real and very different than that, is that there is a body count attached to genocides where you can compare numbers, literal numbers. Things have been quantified, lengths of time, people affected, people displaced, people unalived. All of these things have been tracked. So if we're looking at the numbers, it's not really about worse, better, this, that. It's just what the numbers say. Point blank, period. And the numbers say that the loss of life when it comes to slavery, even the genocide in the Belgian Congo, let's talk about the genocide of the Native Americans alone that is still continuing to this day. That number is more than the number of people lost in the Holocaust. It's also a longer length of time and it's still ongoing. So that being said, that is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how we learn about genocide as an institution, how we learn about genocide as an action that continues to happen in all different types of countries and all different types of populations, and how we're taught about those things comparatively. The Holocaust was not the only, it is the one of many, unfortunately, and that's how we should be taught about it. No one's trying to sit here and say slavery was worse than this or worse than that. All I'm saying is look at the body count. Look at the body count and the way that we talk about the Holocaust versus the way we talk about slavery versus the way we talk about the Native American genocide. It's different, and that's a racial thing. Point blank, period. Anyway, if you're interested, listen to the podcast, link in the bio. My name is Madison. I talk about history through the lens of true crime. My podcast name is Bloodstained. Again, link in the bio. Season 1 is all about slavery. Get into it. Mwah. What do you mean by Israel paid for that to be the reality? Now, this is what I'll say about this. Also, thanks for asking this question nicely. A lot of people have been dragging me in my mentions today. But anyway, I'm going to answer because you asked nicely. First of all, I will say this. I am deeply sorry for being vague with this statement. I was going off the dome. I apologize. I should have been hyper specific with what I meant by that statement because I know how the stereotypes against Jewish people in this country work, and I should have been hyper specific. So let's get hyper specific. Now, when I said this, what I was talking about was the way in which the Israel-backed lobbies that are, lobbying our government officials work in terms of influencing the public's perception of Israel. Now, let me be clear. None of this is not legitimized by our system, right? When you live in a country where it's really made up of a few corporations in a trench coat, everything can be bought and sold and everything is for sale, including our public education system, our health system, how our government officials work, what they lobby for, what they discuss, what they try to pass, the laws they try to pass. Everyone is for sale. They're selling ass up there, okay? And part of the ways certain things are able to become laws or, even talked about on the political stage, it's by lobbies. These lobbyists often represent some sort of corporation that wants certain things to be voted for or not voted for or voted against based on their interests, right? And they usually, make something sweet, whether it's actual legitimate money towards a campaign or just different favors that get done. That is how politics in this country works. So let me be clear. It's through lobbies, which is, again, a legitimized way of doing politics here. But I think they're wrong in general, just for all the implications that I discussed. But yeah, that's what I mean by paid. Like I said, our education system can be bought and sold and has been many times over by many different influences, whether it's corporations, whether it's whole countries. Everyone has their finger in the education pie just because it is one of the earliest places that we're indoctrinated as Americans, as people in Western society about who we are, about what we believe about this country and its truths, right? So it becomes a hotbed for a lot of people to want to put their narrative into the situation because you have a captive audience of kids, K through 12, who are learning about a lot of these things through you, by way of you, and you have the majority of the population's kids as a captive audience in that way. So a lot of people are all up in there, influencing what and how you're taught about certain things. Now, the video, I don't know if you watched the full thing. I basically was discussing how I think we should learn about things in a circular, thematic, holistic way, and not in this linear, individualistic way. And I was using how we discuss about the Holocaust in Western society, in America, as the perfect example for this. But there are many examples for this, child. But, this is just one example. I was saying, wouldn't it have been better and more impactful even for us to have learned about genocide as a theme? And that way we can learn about the patterns, the marketing, what are the conditions of a genocide, what leads up to a genocide, and why, and what can we see all throughout the world, because unfortunately genocides are extremely common. To be clear, that is what I'm saying. Essentially what I'm saying is I wish that every genocide in this world got taught with the same urgency and the same symbolism as the Holocaust does in this country, because we would just be much more informed and much more interconnected. But the truth is it's not. And it's not, because can you tell me about the Cambodian genocide? What teacher taught you about that? What about the genocide in Rwanda, or the Bosnian genocide in the 90s, or what's going on in Sudan, or what's going on in the Congo, or even the Belgian Congo? These are just examples, but there have been so many genocides that we just don't talk about because yours, because I'm guessing by your name, takes priority and it takes a cake. And I want to also add in something into this video. I 100% agree with a lot of the comments of the people saying that because of how positively we came out of World War II, we love to talk about it on a personal note. So it's like a win-win situation between Israel and the United States, because we get to indoctrinate a bunch of kids about our best moment, our best time, good versus evil, the clearest war ever, and we came out on top in more ways than one. So it's a win-win thing. I can admit that, and I like that the people in the comments who passed the vibe check were commenting more stuff for me to bring up. So thank you for that. Now, pertaining back to what you were talking about specifically, let's circle back, let's close out that question and answer it for you. So we have the lobbies. There's a ton of lobbies that are backed by Israel. We know this. This is all conversation that's been in the ether for the past 10 months specifically. But a lot of ways that these lobbyists are able to kind of work their shit and work their mojo is through the nonprofit sector. So in this case, a perfect example pertaining to what you're asking in the conversation we're having, there is a nonprofit called the ICS. I have the website up here right now. You can look it up as icsresources.org/about-us. The ICS is a nonprofit. I'll read that about us right now, and then we can discuss. So it says the Institute for Curriculum Services is dedicated to improving the accuracy of K through 12 instruction and instructional materials on Jews, Judaism, and Jewish history. We do this by developing standards, aligned curricula, and providing professional development to teachers around the country. Sounds great. Sounds great to me. Sounds great. But what they basically do and what they boast about is they are very widely influential. They have successfully had curricula adopted in all 50 states. They talk about that on their website. They've reached 11 or 12 million children through their curricula. They're very proud of this. But this nonprofit functions very much like Mothers for Liberty, you know, that movement where they go, you know, on the local level and basically argue down what can be discussed and what can't be discussed, right? On top of that, they have an entire arm where they do workshops and they go around and they train teachers on how to talk about the Holocaust or anything pertaining to Jews, Judaism, and Jewish history. They said it. I didn't say it. They said it. And what they do is they also do this thing where they kind of edit textbooks. Now, if you want to talk about textbook controversies, Texas and textbooks, that's a whole other conversation, baby. It's well documented in research. I would go to Google about that. But the textbooks in this country and the way they're developed is, you know, fucked. But anyway, moving on. But basically what they do is they go through textbooks and they, you know, change the wording of stuff. And they then have it be put up to a vote in a local election, whether these things are adopted or not. And if they are, then they are. And if they're not, then they're not. That's kind of how it works. So they'll do little things like changing Israeli settlers to community of Israeli people. You know what I mean? You may think that's a small change, but it's a big change because it goes against the historical fact of that being the reality. You see what I mean? I don't know how long ago that was, but back in Florida, it was Florida or Texas, where they found out that they were teaching slavery, and in the textbook it said immigrants instead of slaves. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this. The changing of a word can change the entire perception of a situation. And that's the point of this whole nonprofit. So that's what I mean by paid for. I hope that explains.
You have to be so willfully detached from reality to even begin to suggest that the only reason that the Holocaust is taken as seriously as it is because Israel...
Hey, nice to meet you. I do love your videos. Wish we were meeting under better circumstances, but hey, it is what it is. It's cool. The universe wanted us to collide. We're colliding. Let's have a conversation. Straight out the gate, what I will say is I'm going to apologize. I'm going to apologize. I'm going to say I am deeply sorry for being extremely vague when I said Israel paid for it. I should have been hyper specific when I was talking about this, especially this topic, especially knowing that there is the stereotypes that exist around Jewish people in the West specifically. It's important for me to not be irresponsible with that knowledge. So I apologize. Sorry, someone called me and the audio went out. So I just want to say again, I am deeply sorry for that statement being vague. I'm deeply sorry about that. Also, for all the people who are tagging me in the comment section of that video with malicious intent or non-malicious intent, trying to figure out who I am. Hi, my name is Madison. I'm the creator behind the Madison One channel. I have a podcast called Bloodstained where I talk about history through the lens of true crime. If you're interested in any of that, link in the bio to my Substack, link in the bio to my podcast, link in the bio to everything. So yeah, bye. Now, if you want me to go into detail about that, I made a whole separate video yesterday talking about that, babe. A girl has been jumped in her mentions, let me tell you. So I referred and I responded to that yesterday. So you can look at that video. You cannot look at that video. It's up to you. But what I want to talk about specifically is my video and just expand on a few points for sure. I think one of the main points that I want to bring to the forefront, and I'm happy you stitched me because this conversation can be more widespread because it's more nuanced. You know, it's a nuanced conversation and I want people to be able to feel comfortable to talk about it and have their opinions. I think that after October 7th happened, a lot of people who may or may not have been like super politically aware were thrust into being way politically aware and realizing that Israel has a lot of influence over our political system domestically in a lot of different ways, whether it's lobbies, whether it's, you know, specific clauses when you take a specific job, different contracts with different states. All of this has been well documented. All of this has been talked about. This is nothing new in the past 10 months that I'm preaching. But I want to bring it up here to say that people are asking really real questions about what's going on in Palestine right now, specifically because it is widely unpopular by the people. So if it's unpopular by the people and we live in a democracy, why is it still occurring? And that's the question that I think needs to be discussed more, right? Which brings me back to the original point, which is lobbies and different things. The other side of politics that people don't necessarily get into, the other kind of underside of politics, Now, back to my point about history being a true crime story. Now, it's a true crime story on two levels, right? On the first level, which I think makes sense, most people would agree that a lot of the most egregious things that have happened by the hands of humans in power could definitely fall under the umbrella of true crime. Violent kidnapping, human trafficking, all sorts of stuff live under that umbrella for sure, 100% for sure. But on the second level, and this is the level that I'm most interested about, is how history is wielded, dispensed, sanitized, discussed, created in some senses. I think that is also a true crime story. So yes, on the individual level, the violence, that is true crime. But on the more, bigger macro scale in terms of how we decide who knows what, when they know it, and how they know that information, that's a true crime story with, nefarious intent as to why it's told the way it's told. Now, in my video, I don't know if you watched the whole thing. It's cool if you didn't. I'll explain it here, as you know. I was making a plea that we should learn and engage with history outside of like the Western linear individualized sense of history and talk about it more thematically. And I don't think that's wrong. And I've been called a Nazi for the past 3 days for saying that, which I think is kind of crazy. Just not going to let a bigger creator than me play on my top and insinuate something about me. That just isn't true. So that's what the entirety of the video is talking about. Let me explain further for sure. In that video, I go on to say, how amazing would it be for our global solidarity and understanding if we were taught about genocide as a mechanism that has patterns, that is marketed, that is a thing that happens not just in the singular sense in the way that we're taught about it, but in a sense that is global and human. How interesting would that be? What would that look like? Well, to me, it would look like people being able to recognize the steps that happen before genocide happens, right? And not just by using one example, because as I said, unfortunately, genocide happens all over the world all the time. It's unfortunately one of the most disgusting things that human beings can do to each other, but it happens all of the time. And why is that? What are the conditions that make a genocide possible? Is it financial distress of the nation state? And then what happens after that? After social unrest, financial unrest of a nation state, what do the people in power do, or people who are wanting to be in power do? Oftentimes they blame a minority group. Okay, so we're targeting minorities now. And how do they do that? Well, there's a level of dehumanization that takes place in the rhetoric. I saw a lot of those, cartoons that were coming out after October 7th that were very disturbing. But anyway, and what does dehumanization do? What are the mechanisms of it? How does it get to a place where most people believe that this group of people are not human? Okay? And that's why a lot of POC people, BIPOC individuals, Black people, Indigenous people, immediately heard the dog whistle when Trump became president and started campaigning in 2015, when he said that all Mexicans were and criminals. When he came out the gate saying that, I think a lot of POC, BIPOC, Indigenous people, all of us knew what the fuck that time was, because he was starting to engage in a level of dehumanization that begets bigger things happening. And as we've seen with the different policies that have taken place over the years, bigger shit did happen. Unfortunately, in a real way, genocide is way more universal than a lot of people would be happy to discuss. I mean, not to be a bitch once again, but within the World War II context, the Holocaust wasn't even the only genocide that was taking place at the same time. I mean, what did the Japanese do to the Chinese? The estimates of that situation are 3 million to 10 million, and overwhelmingly, a lot of people in the West don't really know about that or don't really talk about that history. And that's what I'm addressing. How lovely would it be if we were able to actually talk about every genocide in totality, the way that we are able to talk about the Holocaust. I'm not saying diminish how you talk about the Holocaust, talk about it more. But let's talk about all the other genocides and then distill that down to the patterns that create the circumstances for genocide to be possible. Because when you don't do that, and when you anger people, and when you live in a binary space where you're not even allowed to even broach this conversation, or else you're called a fucking Nazi, you live in a world where all of this stuff just keeps fucking happening and no one does anything to stop it. At the end of the day, I think there's a group of people on your end, it's cool, that are dedicated to misunderstanding what I'm going to say, and that's not for them. I'm talking to the people who don't know who the fuck I am and and I'm correcting the narrative about who the fuck I am. My name is Madison. I have a degree in sociology. I'm a smart bitch. I have a podcast called Bloodstained. If you're interested into getting into the gray areas, into the nuance of history, link in the bio to subscribe. That's who I'm talking to. If you don't want to understand me, I can't make you. But I just want to correct the narrative because it needs to be corrected. So how we decide who knows what, when they know it, and how they know.
This right here is one of the main points that people engaging with Maddie's video are actively ignoring. And I think that is very dangerous. So much so that it is going to be the detriment to those of us living in the global north. Let's take Yuval's response to Maddie's video as an example, right? Yuval gives us a breakdown as to why the Holocaust was such a prolific iteration of human atrocity and genocide, right? And one of the examples that he gives is the fact that Germany was so systemically efficient at eradicating the Jewish people. This is why the Holocaust stands apart. And yet you can tell in his rhetoric that there is no acknowledgement of the fact that we are taught only that Germany was efficient. We are not taught how Germany became efficient. We are not taught how Germany reached that level of evil. And I don't think that's by accident. The first iteration of German concentration camps were not invented by Smotsy Germany, nor were they first enacted within the borders of Germany. In 1908, the German Empire invaded Namibia, a peninsula of Namibia, which would later be called Death Island. And it was called Death Island because the German Empire created concentration camps to eradicate the Herero and Namaqua people. So that atrocity, that genocide, is directly linked to the Holocaust. And yet, no one knows that history, let alone that it's connected. There are multiple entities, both private, non-governmental, and governmental entities, whose interests converge when it comes to cultivating an ignorance for the people living in the global north. If we were to understand the Holocaust with a less westernized and compartmentalized understanding and a more globalized understanding, I think we would learn, one, that atrocity did not happen in isolation. It was an atrocity that was a part of a network of atrocities enacted by the same entities. And those entities are still alive and kicking, cultivating new atrocities that are also very much connected. And not only would we learn that, but we would also learn how easy it is for nations in the global north to enact the terroristic policies that they push on the global south inward. How easy it is for the terrorism of colonization to be enacted against their very own citizens. If we were to have that learning, then we would be able to see the red flags, the precursors. We might fuck around and be able to be proactive against genocide rather than reactive and woefully ill-equipped at stopping them or repairing their harm. Who gets to teach this history and what parts of the history they get to teach is very important. It's very much propagandized. And there's a reason for that. And it is the cause for a lot of the disconnect. It's the cause for a lot of reasons why people cannot see the connection between Palestine, West New Guinea, Congo, Kashmir, so on and so forth. All of these atrocities are connected. They're not happening in a vacuum. But we can't understand that concept if we're not taught it. We can't understand that concept if what we are taught is a propagandized version of actual history. And I feel like we owe it to the victims of these genocides. We owe it to the victims of these atrocities to, at the very least, try to deconstruct this bullshit. Deconstruct our conditioning so that we can at least fucking acknowledge their existence, yo.
My friend Rachel made really nice videos. Keyword nice. I'm not nice. Giving you all a warning now. I had a long day, walking all day. I had a pimple and I popped it. So here we go. Thinking about the Yuval's video, I'm gonna just say this, and I hope y'all are listening. Stop centering the opinions, the analysis, the world views of people. Okay? Because 9 times out of 10, they have refused to deconstruct the white supremacy or the Western indoctrination we've all been fed. Like, not that they can't. It's not an inability. Because we know that they love history, they are able to comprehend and critically think, but yet they have refused to do that additional work to deconstruct where their worldview came from. Because from my understanding, Yuval's also the same person where folks were like demanding him to speak on Palestine, and he also had to explain that he actually had to deconstruct the propaganda he had been fed from Zionists. So it's letting you know his worldview has a lot more work to do. And this is not to say we should not listen to folks who are like unlearning things, but it is to warn you that if they are not doing enough work, that's going to show in their analysis. When Toni Morrison said that racism is nothing but attraction, she ate with that, because now the conversation has gone backwards where we have to catch up to where Madison left us off, because Madison's video was chef's kiss. And the thing is, what was so sinister about Yuval's video is that to really harp on that little part of her video is to isolate it, because the folks who got what she was saying got it, because it wasn't dripped in any like anti-Semitic trope whatsoever. We're just talking about Zionism and the way Zionism is embedded in the American political system. People have been learning about AIPAC for the last 9 months. So we're not gonna deny the lobbying power that Zionists hold. We're just not gonna fucking do that. But another thing, the idea that Germany was like some pillar of civilization, which is why it was so surprising. Surprising to who? Surprising to who? Because the Africans they were massacring, they were rehearsing and practicing on before they inflicted that in Germany, they wouldn't say they were civilized. But again, so many of these history-verse folks center European history as this pillar. Because again, I guess us black and brown people are just the barbaric savages that had to be civilized with the Europeans. Our history, our experiences by the violence they inflicted doesn't actually matter to us. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because that's exactly what happens. That's exactly what has been showing in his comments, in the comments of folks who are having to basically play catch up and be like, yeah, folks, his worldview is very half-ass. It is. Fucking half-assed to even give it that much grace, all right? But when we talk about modern-day genocides that happen in like 21st century or the 20th century, all of them have direct ties to colonialism. Like Rwanda, Congo, what happened in Germany, those 3 in particular, direct ties to European colonialism. But if you continue to center European history as the pillar of civilization, as the world history we can actually hold on to because it's legitimate or because it is, it created our future, which it didn't, because again, who were they building the back off of? Like, they were able to build their society off the back of who? All right? If folks are not deconstructing what their worldview came from, you need to be more critical and have more discernment and stop uplifting their analysis and opinions as scripture when 9 times out of 10 it's some half-ass shit because they refuse to deconstruct it.
Okay, I have some more thoughts regarding Maddie Swan's video in regards to the correction that Yuval did, because it very much is the same correction and that many other black people get. I'm thinking specifically about like black femmes, black women, or black, marginalized gender folks, because oftentimes non-black people, and this is very broad, so we're including white folks and non-black people of color, when they try to correct us on an issue, it almost always is them trying to put us in our place. And from Yuval's video, that's exactly what I got. And my video that I made just yesterday, someone commented and we had that exchange where we were like, yeah, it very much gave, he was trying to put her in her place. And that happens quite a bit, where Black women make a statement or a comment that contradicts the conceptions, the ideas that non-black people have hold regarding any other topic. And because it contradicts with what they know, therefore we are automatically wrong. We are automatically wrong without them actually knowing what we're wrong about, but we're just simply flat out wrong. And they have to remind us where we actually should be, and that we actually have to humble ourselves with our conversations, that we should not try to go above what we think we know, because we don't actually know as much at all. And it's really disgusting. And it was really unfortunate to see that display of behavior, especially from someone who has been chasing after a racially black coded woman on this app. I'm not sure her race or ethnicity, but she looked like she could be a black woman. That's all I know for sure. And I just find that very interesting, for him to be chasing after this black woman while on the same very app tries to put another black woman in her place because she went above what he was comfortable or honestly ready or prepared or even having the range and depth to even discuss for himself. And I honestly wish y'all would stop trying to humble us and probably take a step back yourself and reflect on what you know and where your worldview came from.
I'm sure you've seen Yuval's video that has since been taken down, or you've seen a stitch of it, or somebody with their 2 cents. And here I am to put in my 2 cents as somebody who has studied the Holocaust and World War II for 10 years. I've written a course about it. I have taught about it. I'm writing a book about how to teach about World War II better, because it's not taught about very well in the United States, and this is very relevant to this conversation. And I'm also writing a very controversial book, a comparative analysis of the genocides and why we only teach about one. This video is going to be really long, and it's going to be several parts, and I'm going to say a lot of words that the algorithm really doesn't like, so make sure to interact, please. So this all started when a black creator said that Israel paid for the Holocaust to be prominent in American and Western education, and they are correct. And then Yuval went on a 7-minute tirade about it. Now, I think Yuval said that word choice matters, and it does, and his word choice was not super great in his video. So when you say Israel paid for Holocaust education, what you mean is Israeli lobbyists, Israeli organizations, and organizations like the United Holocaust Memorial Museum paid for it.
The reason why most people think that the Holocaust is the worst tragedy to ever happen to humanity in the modern era is because Israel paid for that to be the reality. Because the numbers just actually aren't there.
Yes, they are. You have to be so willfully detached from reality to even begin to suggest that the only reason that the Holocaust is taken as seriously as it is because Israel paid for it.
Saying things like this really triggers some people because it makes you think that it's an anti-Semitic trope of the Jews control the world with money. Now that is anti-Semitic, but it's factual to say that Israeli organizations lobby for Holocaust education. Israel has in fact paid for it since the late 1960s, and until then there were only a few books, namely a book by Hannah Arendt and another by Raoul Hilberg, and those were very controversial. Raoul actually had over 20 members of his family perish in the Holocaust, so he's very connected to this, and he's one of the leading prominent Holocaust historians. And when his book came out, The Destruction of the European Jew, everyone was like, no, we don't want to dredge up the past. Don't talk about it. Especially American Jews who wanted to distance themselves from Israel. In 1967, after the Israelis won in an Arab-Israeli war, the U.S. decided that Israel would be a good proxy for power in the Middle East. And that's when people started to remember the Holocaust and fear this propaganda that there would be a second Holocaust to come. That's why they needed all this power. That, along with saying that anything that is criticism of Israel is just inherently anti-Semitic, is all part of Israeli propaganda to garner support and deflect criticism.
I want to be clear, I think it's strange to say anything is the worst thing to ever happen in human history, because I think it is bizarre to rank tragedies.
Many people have pointed out the pure irony in you saying that it's bizarre to compare or rank tragedies, and then you go on to promote the complete uniqueness of the Holocaust, thereby ranking it above everything else.
But I also think it is very weird to respond to somebody who's saying, I think X is the worst thing to ever happen to humankind, whether that be the Holocaust, slavery, colonialism, and respond by going, well, actually, and then citing some other event that had a larger body count.
Are you not well actualing her?
There are quite a few things that do make the Holocaust uniquely horrific, even within the context of the history of genocide.
The only thing that is completely unique, never been done before in the Holocaust, was the sheer size and magnitude, the industrialization of the killing process. That's unique. However, the gas was invented in America. Zyklon B, we used it on Mexican migrant workers. And the mobile gas trucks that they used at first were invented in the Soviet Union. Segregation laws, taken from Jim Crow laws. Eugenics, taken from American eugenics and other European eugenics. Everything had been done before, to some extent. Gas chambers weren't new. But the size, I'll give you that. But that's not enough to say that the Holocaust cannot be compared to anything else. The Holocaust exceptionality is part of the propaganda that certain organizations and countries push in order to keep that genocide at the top of everything else. Sometimes people are confused with the idea of comparing genocides because they think that means you are ranking them. Ranking and comparing are similar but not identical, and it is in fact this idea of Holocaust exceptionality. That's the ranking. They're putting that above everything else. Comparing is just saying, look at the similarities, not this one is better or worse.
You need to remember, it is not just the death toll that is significant here. Obviously, if you compare the Holocaust to something like the Atlantic slave trade, something that took place over the course of 250 years, the death toll is going to pale in comparison.
In the transatlantic slave trade, about 13 million Africans were brought to the Americas. That does not include the amount who died on the ships coming here, or the people who died on the walks, the death marches from the middle of Africa to the camps on the coast, and then in the camps where they were literally beaten into submission. Doesn't include all those millions of deaths. But because that happened over the course of, 250 years, it's not good enough.
But remember, the Holocaust happened over 4 years. That's it. 6 million Jews killed in just 4 years.
It's important to be precise. So it's actually 5 years, not 4. If you're basing it off of the date that the first death camp opened, 5 full years of the Holocaust, but almost 6 years of the war.
That is an average of 4,000 people killed a day. During the worst 100-day stretch of the Holocaust, nearly 1.5 million Jews were killed, averaging over 14,000 Jews a day.
Since it's actually 5 years, the per-day death rate is actually a low of 2,790 and a high of 3,287 per day, on average. You are close on the 100-day surge in 1942, when about 1.47 million Jews died in that time frame.
This is not even including the 5 million non-Jews that were killed during the Holocaust, so in truth, all these numbers are almost double.
It is interesting that you choose the high end of the estimate for Jews, but you don't even hit it close to the low end of the estimate for the other people. The low estimate that Raoul Hilberg published, who is a Holocaust historian, is 5.1 million Jewish deaths, and the highest estimate is 6.3 million. The other people that you don't talk about that were killed in the Holocaust was 12 million as a lowest estimate and 24 million as a highest estimate. And that's all civilians.